We take a jeep tour into Sedona National Park.
Smoke Creek, off the 179, connected with an old stage road that came down out of Flagstaff, went across the valley over to Prescott. We'll just get mail and supplies. The early settlers would have to travel all the way out south, connect with the stage road, and then either go all the way back up to Flagstaff or go across the valley over the mountains to Prescott. Either way, the trip would take a week to a week and a half by wagon. Now, sometimes Carl, he might travel to the other side of the valley to the old mining town of Jerome to deliver produce. And if he was over there and there happened to be mail for any of the locals, we had about 15 families that lived in the Sedona area along Oak Creek. If there was any mail for anyone, he would pick it up and bring it back. But even then, by wagon, the trip to Jerome was a 4-day trip. Today by car it's about 25-30 minutes. So Carl decides that he's going to apply for a post office here. Now he wants to name the town after himself. Schnebley Station is the name that he chooses. And then as a backup, heavens forbid, if anybody was to reject that name, he tossed in Oak Creek Crossing. Well, unfortunate for poor old Carl, both of the names were rejected. There was too many letters to fit on the cancellation stamp. So he's sitting around one morning and he's talking to his brother Ellsworth, who lived out here. Ellsworth was a school teacher. They're sitting around scratching their head trying to think of another name with less letters in it. And Ellsworth finally looks over at his brother and he says, "Hey Carl, why don't you name it after your lovely wife Sedona?" And so they did. She was 25 years old and had one of the prettiest areas in the country named after her. Okay, this is not going to work. We're going to have to move up.
He does losing Snoopy up there.
Yeah, there's Snoopy. Snoopy's right there. Probably our most popular rock formation. And then up on top you'll see a flat area. And there's some trees up there. That's Lucy in profile. And she's actually looking over at the Lion King. They're looking at each other. You see it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, John McCain has his place in Sedona, too, doesn't
It's
he?
actually outside of Sedona, about 5 miles out toward Page Springs. Yeah.
Okay.
It's a pretty area out in there. You can't see his home from the road, and it's actually a county road that's off the main road to get back in there, and then his drive is off of that. You can't see it from any of the public roads.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, about the time that Carl was establishing the town of Sedona and a post office here in the area, some of the other local men decided to develop an old cattle trail, try to shorten that trip up to Flagstaff for supplies. This road that we're on here is called Schnebley Hill Road. This started off as a very narrow cattle trail. A lot of the early ranchers, they would often move their cattle up onto the plateau in the heat of the summer months because it was a lot cooler up there. And then in the winter, because it's so cold up on top, they bring it back down here in the valley. So it took about 3 years, about 6 of the local men with pickaxes, shovels, and dynamite to blast an old wagon road, widen that cattle trail out into a wagon road in order to get to Flagstaff. Well, when they had the road completed in 1905, it actually cut down their travel time to Flagstaff from a week to a week and a half to a day and a half to 2 days. Gosh, it's a pretty morning this morning. You guys couldn't have had better weather.
My daughter's camera, I didn't know whether you could bring it or not, because he won't take pictures, so I'm stuck with 2 cameras.
Then they laugh at me when it's something
So
else.
what? They're going to laugh at me too.
Sounds like I don't think this is
Oh, it makes me mad. I can't run. My daughter, she's got her big expensive camera. My son-in-law takes a movie camera, and they take beautiful pictures.
They know what they're doing.
But yeah, don't learn.
I know what you mean.
Too
unfortunately,
deep
I'm
down,
sorry,
huh?
some of you kind of have to turn around. You'll get a chance to see it on the way back down. The tall mountain right there is Thunder Mountain. Walt Disney lived out here 1948 to 1959. That was actually his inspiration for the Thunder Mountain Railroad ride at his theme parks. The pinnacle that's off to the left of that is Chimney Rock. And Chimney Rock is kind of like a landmark here in the Sedona area. This area down below here to the left is known as Bear Wallow. We had a very healthy population of grizzly bears out here in the early days. The last two grizzlies were killed off in the Sedona area in 1938. And there was a dog that actually killed one of those grizzlies down here in this area. If you look over there on the side of the mountain, you can see where the old wagon road was kind of along the side of the mountain. The road that we'll use, it actually goes all the way up to the top, is a different road. It's a different route altogether. But that's part of the old wagon road there. Does anybody know why the rocks are so red? Iron. Absolutely. We have a half to 1% iron content. And what happens to iron when you leave it out in the elements? Rust. It's just a bunch of old rusty rocks around here. That's all it is.
The water.
This is kind of an interesting plant right here. This is called a sugar sumac. You kind of take a whiff of that, very aromatic. Native people, they used to take some of those leaves, they crumble up and kind of sprinkle them around their dwellings. It kind of repels insects, like a natural insect repellent.
We got that too. Enough room?
Had a lady once said that she
You got
should
breaks.
need to put those leaves in her husband's gym bag. Natural insect repellent. Our elevation here in this area is about 4,500 feet above sea level. And this is known as a high desert area, or another term is transition zone. And the reason why they call it a transition zone, it's where two zones overlap. We've got the forest of the high plateau overlapping with the desert. Very rich, very diverse area. It's one of the few areas where you will see the evergreen trees growing next to cactus and succulents. There's over 470 some plants that grow here that are native to this area. Over half of those plants are useful to the native people for food, clothing, shelter, and medicines. And I've got a little story to tell you about this canyon coming up right here. When I first started driving Jeeps about 5 years ago, my guide manager at the time was kind of getting me familiar with the area, some of the landmarks. So she was showing me a Forest Service map that showed all these canyons and all the names of these canyons. She pointed this canyon out on the map to me, and she said, "Sherry, how would you say the name of this canyon?" I don't know, it looks like Jalapeno to me. She said, "Let me tell you a story. Map makers came through this area in the early days. One of the map makers looked over at his buddy and he said, 'What's the name of this canyon?' His buddy goes, 'Hell if I know.'" And that's how they put it down on the map. It's all one long word. Hell if I know, or Jalapeno, whichever you prefer. That's a true story. It is a true story. It's I had some folks on tour with me the other day, and I didn't even think about this before, but they were dead on. He says, I was wondering about that, who came up with some of these names. He says, for instance, Dry Beaver Creek. And I says, yeah, there's another one out by Enchantment Resort, too, that's called Dry Creek. I said, that's kind of like an oxymoron, isn't it? Dry Creek, kind of like jumbo shrimp. One of the plants that you see that's blooming alongside side of the road here with the yellow blossoms on it. Not the large blossoms like this one, but the small ones right
Be
here.
careful, huh?
This is called snakeweed or broomweed. And there's a lot of myths about that plant. There's some, I've even heard some of the tour guides say that if you were to make a poultice out of the flowers and leaves of that plant, put it on a rattlesnake bite, it'll draw rattlesnake venom. It does not draw rattlesnake venom. Nothing really does. They say that within 30 seconds of being bit by a rattlesnake, that venom's already entered your bloodstream. So you wouldn't even have time to locate one of those plants, let alone try to make a poultice out of it and put it on there. What that plant is anti-inflammatory and a painkiller. So if you were to make a poultice out of that and put it on a non-venomous snake bite, a bee sting, mosquito bite, spider bite, scorpion sting, red ant sting, something like that, it would help reduce the swelling and eliminate some of the pain and redness. But it does not draw rattlesnake venom. Here in Arizona, we have 11 species and 6 subspecies of rattlesnakes alone. The most common rattlesnake that we have out here is known as the western diamondback. And there's a lot of myths about rattlesnakes. One of the things people think is that, for instance, that they like the hotter it is, the better they like it. That really isn't true. They're cold-blooded, so the body temperature is the temperature of the surface that they're lying on. There's a very narrow window of temperature that is ideal for them to be most active, and it's actually between 70 and 90 degrees. Below 70 degrees, it starts getting too cold. The colder it gets, the slower they move because their muscles are cold. You get above 90 degrees, it's too hot for them. You can get a rattlesnake at temperatures of 110 or more, and they will be dead within 10 minutes. They literally will bake to death. So when you understand a little bit about snakes, you can understand, certain times of the day when it's, it would be safe to hike and when to watch out for them and what areas they might be at. They say that for every 3,000 square feet of land in Arizona, there's about 11 of them. Now that seems like an awful lot, but chances are you won't ever encounter any of them. And the reason is 99% of the time, the moment they feel the vibrations of you walking or driving on a trail, they're going to go the other way. They don't like you any more than you like them. And they're going to try to get away from you if they can. The other thing about rattlesnakes is not all of the bites. In fact, the majority of rattlesnake bites are non-venomous bites. 75% of your rattlesnake bites are actually what they call dry bites. There's little or no venom in them. And there's a reason for that. Rattlesnake venom, most of your rattlesnake venom is what's known as a hemotoxin. It destroys body tissue. That's actually the first stage of their digestive process because they don't chew their food, they swallow it whole. The moment they inject that venom into their prey, the body tissue starts to break down and die. That venom is so powerful it will actually dissolve bone. And what they'll usually do, a rattlesnake will usually do, is they size you up and they realize you're too big to swallow. They're not going to waste their venom on you. It can take 7 to 10 days to refill their venom sacs. In the meantime, they can't hunt or eat, so they're not going to be wasteful with that venom. Now that's 75% of the time. Of course, it's the other 25% you got to be concerned about. And believe it or not, it's usually the young snakes. They have not learned how to regulate the amount of venom that is injected. You can get a pretty high dose from a very young snake. Rattlesnake dens. One of the reasons why they're called pit vipers is not because they live in the ground or in a den or a pit. They're actually called pit vipers because they have heat sensor glands on each side of their head behind their nostrils. It's like an infrared sensor, and they're very, very sensitive to detecting heat. If you're walking on the trail, they can detect the heat left behind by a footstep on the ground. They can detect mouse in the pitch darkness that is 20 feet away. They can detect the heat from them. So they're very, very effective at hunting at night. They have to see. And I think another thing too about rattlesnakes is kind of interesting. And if you were to wander around some of the shops uptown Sedona, the tourist shops, one of the things that a lot of times you'll see for sale are rattlesnake eggs. Well, that's kind of a joke because rattlesnakes don't lay eggs; they actually give birth to live young. Which I just assumed all snakes laid eggs.
So it's just the rattlesnakes that don't lay eggs, the other?
I don't know. I don't know about other snakes. I know rattlesnakes give birth to live young. So.
Think of all the movement inside with all those little baby rattles.
Really. We saw a baby rattler, diamondback, early in the week. We were doing an evening tour up at Red Rock West. We went up to the old Van Buren cabin, and the temperature was a lot like it is now, which is ideal for them to be active. They probably won't be active out now, and it's because nighttime temperatures were so cold, so they're still kind of warming up. They'll probably be more active in the evening tonight because they've had a chance to warm up during the day. But this was in the evening, and of course I walked ahead of the group, and I'm kind of clapping my hands and stomping my feet and making noise to kind of give them a chance to move out of the way. And we walked up to the cabin, and we didn't see any sign of him. Then we stepped back outside of the cabin, and there was a little baby rattler about this long, and he was just kind of laying on the rock. And they look so kind of cute and harmless, but realize that at that point in their life, they actually are the most venomous.
Really?
Yeah, if they were to bite you, you could get a pretty good dose of venom from them. This view only gets better as we get higher. It's only going to get better as we get higher.
I gotta remember there's no guardrails.
Black streaks that you see on these red rocks is what's known as, they call it desert tapestry or desert varnish. It's a chemical reaction of water and the iron and manganese in the rock. It's like a stain. Of course, it takes a long time for it to turn dark like that. We get heavy rains out here, and these some of these areas, it just turns into waterfalls coming off these red rocks. It's really beautiful.
Did you guys have any damage last week with the tornado?
Yeah. Well, not the tornado, but the rains.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we had some high winds, but some trees came down, but not anything that was really serious. But the rains, we had some pretty heavy rains. Some of the trails, it kind of roughed up some of our off-road trails pretty good.
Oh, okay.
Okay, if you guys look over here, right here on the side of the bank, you see these holes. These are rattlesnake pens.
Oh, geez, that's nice.
Yeah. Anybody want to get out?
No,
See
I'm
how
good.
I'm good.
Don't wake them up.
Sure you don't get a twig rattle on them when they get traversed.
This road, believe it or not, it actually goes all the way up to the freeway, I-17. It's about 12 miles long. First 6 miles, of course, you're climbing up the side of the canyon, or actually up the side of the movie on the rim. Once you get up on top, the other 6 miles is all flat. And it's fairly wide. You got some washboard in it, but it's really not too bad. But there is an exit off I-17 onto this road.
Is that right?
And unfortunately, it shows up on a lot of road maps, and a lot of people see that it's only 12 miles long, and they think it's a shortcut to Sedona. Unfortunately, if you were to travel it by car, it would probably take 3 hours to go 12 miles.
Now, I've noticed since we've been climbing the hill, I've seen people coming down in cars.
Oh yeah. Yesterday we were coming up here about this time yesterday. And there was actually a motorhome towing a vehicle coming down this road. I'm sure they thought it was a shortcut.
Now, did they come off the highway?
Yeah, they came off the
Coming
freeway.
off the highway?
I don't know. I don't know if they came up here and they're going back down, or if they came off the highway. A lot of people do come off the highway, though, thinking it's a shortcut to Sedona. We have had motorhomes, Greyhound buses, and 18-wheelers come down this road. Now, the thing is with this road, once you come down over the rim, once you drop down over the rim and into the canyon, there's no place for these big rigs to turn around. They've got to keep going. That corner back there that we just came around, and I'll point it out to you again on our way back down, that hairpin curve. About 7 years ago, there was an 18-wheeler that came down this road. He was hauling a trailer with one of those big concrete bridge beams. Of course, he couldn't turn around once he dropped over the edge up here. He got as far as that corner back there. He could not turn wide enough. He couldn't swing wide enough to make that corner. So the tires of his trailer went into that ditch, tipped him into the trees, and it cost the trucking company $8,000 to get him out of there. But he must have been sweating bullets coming down. I thought about that yesterday too when I saw that motorhome coming down through here. I thought, now I'm wondering, was that his decision or hers? This is part of the old wagon road right here.
Wow.
That was the old wagon road, so it makes this one look kind of like a freeway here, don't it? Yeah. Kind of makes you wonder why they call it the good old days, don't it? This was a 2-day trip by wagon up to Flagstaff from Sedona.
Was that a cesspool cover that we just went over?
Excuse me?
The round disc in the ground, was that like a sewer
Manhole
cover?
cover? Yeah, it's not so much for sewer as it is for drainage. There's also fiber optic lines. You'll see the little towers for the fiber optic lines up here. They have talked in the past about paving this road, but it would not be a good idea. About once every 3 to 5 years. It takes a year and a half for the cones to reach maturity for to harvest the nuts. And the nuts are encased in a hard little shell, and they grow tucked up in the folds of the pine cone. It's only about 6 or 7 nuts in each cone, so it's very limited availability. I used to take bags of the roasted piñon nuts to baseball games when I lived in Albuquerque and eat them like sunflower seeds until I found out a few things about them. The good thing is they are a complete source of protein. They have all 20 amino acids in them. Here's our pinyon pine right here, and there's the cones. They have all 20 amino acids in them. They're actually a better source of protein than meat. So if you know anybody that's a vegetarian, it's a good source of a complete protein. They have more protein per ounce than a steak. The downside is 1 pound of pine nuts can have 3,000 calories.
Holy mackerel.
Man, I know you've seen those in movies, especially that one with that little point on it.
Should be doing some cropping on my computer anyway. Pick out what I want, crop off the rest.
That's true. It'd be great screensavers.
Yeah, I heard somebody talking about movies. We've had over 100 Western movies filmed out here in the Sedona area. Particularly, you saw a lot of them that were filmed in the 40s and 50s. Probably one of the most popular ones that was ever made was, it was filmed in 1950. It was Broken Arrow. That's where Jeff Chandler played Cochise.
Yes, I remember. I saw it. Yes.
Jimmy Stewart, Deborah Paget.
Oh, that's okay.
That was actually,
Any of them. No, he's seen every movie made.
Yeah.
Yes, I did.
that was up for several Academy Awards in 1951. That was filmed in its entirety out here, and there were several scenes that were actually filmed up here on Schnebly Hill, off Schnebly Hill Road.
Okay.
I'm going to point out, well, at least one of them. If we were to go a little higher, I could point out another one, but
When I was 8 years old. A quarter across the other movie. Yeah.
what's kind of interesting about that movie is Cochise was Chiricahua Apache. The Chiricahua Apaches were actually located down south of Tucson in the Sonoran Desert, and that's, of course, where you